So, good evening or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this, or good morning. This is the exalens Teach Computing. This is meant to support the teaching of primary computing. I don't profess to be an expert in primary computing. I don't have a degree in computer science or anything like that. I just spend a lot of time in schools. I've got 24 years teaching experience. My name is Alan, and I used to do a lot of these webinars a few years ago. People said that they found them really, really helpful. Now I find I'm being asked lots and lots of questions again. People want me to come into their schools, and sometimes, like, I could be in a school in Bath in one part of the week and then up in Durham at the other end of the week. So this is to try and help teachers in any way. A couple of things I'm going to point to in this document now that I have open. So if you're in the live webinar now watching this, not the catch-up one, you've probably clicked on this link here, which gets you to the room that we're in. We had a little technical hitch just a moment ago where it all froze, and it's not happened since, so I'll carry on. The notes that I'm referring to, it says here, these notes, there's a link there. If you go to that link and today's date, or like Thursday the 10th of May, in the notes, you'll be able to get to that. The next one of these webinars is the same time on a different day. It's 21st of May. And you can click here now, and that'll take you off to the other page where you can go and register. And when I've pressed the stop button at the end of this recording, I'll then have a video which I will upload to YouTube later on, and then I'll put a link in here. So you might actually be watching the recording right now, or is it the real thing live? It will really help me because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. And it's important that I find out quickly if there's things that I can do that will be in any way going to support you. The plan is that the topics each month will be very different topics. Now, I do actually have a list I've written of 49 topics for these, and the plan is to try and fit 3 in every month. So if what I think is the 49th most important one is actually your first most important one, you've got an option in the feedback to tell me what you think should be on the next webinar. And it can just be questions like, is anybody using purple mash? Or, oh gosh, we've had this nightmare in our school. And at the end of the day, they're just my opinions, but they're based on talking to hundreds, possibly thousands of teachers on a regular basis. And so just to point back to the thing I'm talking about at the moment is there is a little feedback form. It's a Google form, and you can kind of click agree, disagree, strongly agree. And it would be fantastic if you do that straight after the live webinar or after watching some of the recording. And if you do that, my commitment to you is then I will take on board your comments and I will try to improve the quality. I don't think tonight's going to be perfect. I don't think people are going to be going like, whoa, that was brilliant. That really helped me. But I do hope if you join me on the journey that over the next few months, this will really be a valuable tool to help you. So that's the welcome, introduction, and features all done now. This document, my plan is that eventually all of these will be like in a website that you'll never have to pay to go to. You just go in, you can access previous webinars, so you won't have to access future ones until they've been broadcast. And I'm planning as well, like even after tonight, if a resource comes up about digital leaders, then I'll go back to that and I'll put some resource in there. So it's really my way of trying to help as many teachers in primary schools as much as possible. Now, all of these things here are links. So when I click on this, it's going to take me to a linked part of this document. You can see it's just page 3. And what I did when I created this document, so I like using this this is a Google document, you might recognize it. I've stripped out some of the detail at the top. I do have 2 hands, by the way. What I've done is I selected this, I said make this text here a header, and then when I was going through the document there earlier and setting it up, I just highlighted that bit there. I said make that go to that heading. So it's just to make it easier to navigate through. When I'm finished and I forget what I'm supposed to be doing next, the bit somewhere it said program there, and oh, I can go back up to the top again. I used to plan all of my lessons in this way. I'm not saying that you should, especially if you're teaching year ones, they're probably not going to find your lesson plan of much use. But I found with some of the classes I taught, it meant that they could look ahead. I could click on links and things, but not telling you should do that. Just a recommendation. Now, this topic, which is going to last for about the next 15 minutes or so, is on the concept of digital leaders, which is a very nice solution. It's a very nifty solution to solving some problems that you might have in your school. And in summary, it's how you can recruit a group of pupils or students that you think will help you in your mission to support the growth and development of computing in your primary school. So to get started, I'd like to ask you some questions. So my first question to ask is, do you already have a digital leaders program in your school? And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to just post it over here in the chat so that you know that's the question that I'm asking. And then I need to switch back again to the document. And it would just be helpful to hear from you. Like you say, yeah, or it's something we started, or it's a bit dormant at the moment. We probably need an injection of energy and enthusiasm to get it going. So Lauren is saying that they've started to introduce digital leaders, but don't follow a program. Well, if you start to introduce it, I'd say you already have a program. There are commercial programs you can buy. I'm not really going to recommend or endorse those because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make this free of salesy kind of products. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to share as much information and guidance as possible that costs very little or it's free. And I'm going to suggest and describe a few models in schools I've worked with or that I'm aware of where it seems to have succeeded really well. Now, somebody else has just made a comment as well that they had a digital leaders program, but it probably was thriving at one point, but then for one reason or another, I mean, we all know how busy we are with workload, that it probably just ran out of steam a little bit. And there's possible causes and reasons. So I find that digital leaders is a good answer to one of the problems when teachers say some of these kind of things. So these are just like off the top of my head to say, oh, we've got a few really talented, skilled pupils in year 5 and year 6, and they're like talking about building stuff in Minecraft, and they've built their own this and that, and we don't really feel that in terms of what we're doing in the computing curriculum that we can really push and challenge and stretch those students and pupils a lot. And it's causing us a problem because when we are doing the computing activity, we're wondering, like, are they actually just getting bored and we're not stretching and challenging them enough? So that's one problem that digital leaders can be a solution to. The other one is, in our school, the tech, it's such a mess. We've got iPads in one room that are never charged up, and then we have a laptop trolley, and it's such a mess. So if maintaining and keeping on top of your inventory and your tech and keeping printers serviced, it can actually become kind of like a training academy for students and pupils where they take on leadership roles and responsibilities. And you'll know that in your classes, you've got certain children that really respond to those kind of opportunities. And what you might do in terms of recruitment, you might one day just announce to the whole class, right, okay, class, year 4, this is something I'm thinking of doing at the moment. Or it might be that you just individually approach a couple of your pupils and have a quiet word and say, look, I'm thinking of launching this program and I think that you'd be an ideal candidate. Like, okay, I'm probably using heavy language there if it's year 4 that we're talking to, but I think you get the gist. So I've described some of the advantages, and it would be helpful just so I know that you've not gone to sleep. Just posted another message there into the chat, and this is kind of to try and keep the webinar interactive. What advantages that you might already know that something like this could bring, or potential advantages that you can see. And I'll just waffle and blah 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 for a moment while you think about what they are. And great on you, Dom and Sam and Lauren, for typing messages in. Okay, so one problem can be, as part of the recruitment, you get inundated. You got 30, 40 children. They all want to be digital leaders. And then it's like, well, maybe having too many digital leaders could cause us other problems, and hierarchy, and how we're going to manage all of those. So where I've seen it be the most successful is where you might pick a small handful to begin with as a pilot program, and they may just be pupils exclusively from year 6, or it might be that you pick 3 or 4 from year 6 and 3 or 4 from year 5, and you run it as you say, we're going to run this thing for 6 weeks. And that might, I would expect that will require quite a big investment from the teacher to begin with, because you're going to have to come up with a 6 week plan, and you have to figure out who are these 6 that you think would make the ideal candidates. But it could then be that from your pilot program, you could then extend it up to phase 2, where the first few digital leaders that you recruit then actually help you with part of the recruitment process. So if you decide then that we're going to recruit some from year 4 at the same time, sorry, following on, maybe you could ask your year 6s to design and write some suitable questions. They could set up interviews. You could pass all of the ownership over to that to them, or you could sort of take an executive role where they let you know how it's going. Another thing, if you've got 30 or 40 applicants, you might ask them to within 100 words, or in 4 sort of tweet style messages. Okay, they're not quite as long, short as they used to be, but you could come up with some kind of an application form. You could even ask a group of your potential digital leaders to design what they think the application process should look like. I mean, you can put as much or as little into this, but I mean, ultimately, what we're talking about taking is some children who've got a particular niche or talent or interest, and developing that to a very healthy extent. I'm going to read some more messages that are in the chat. So one of the advantages, definitely, I'd agree with Sam, encouraging independence and taking responsibility. And I don't want to talk too much about stereotypes, but here goes. There are sometimes, I have discovered myself, at least in my anecdotal kind of experience, that some of these children who are really good at organizing equipment aren't necessarily so good at managing their own relationships with others. And this might be a nice little ground in environments in which they could, maybe give that, like, let them see what it's like to be a leader or a manager of a particular activity. Definitely agree with you, Dom. It's going to help the children. You're empowering them to learn new skills, making sure that some of the technical equipment's working, connected up properly. And I'm going to make a suggestion as well. So if you really want to go to town on your interviewing and recruitment process, you could even set up what I use a learning activity sometimes I call sabotage, where you may yourself deliberately prevent something from working. If it was a desktop computer, it might be that you power it down and switch it off on the wall, remove the one of the USB cables and the mouse. You might do that sneaky thing where you stick something over the sensor, and you could say, right, you've got 30 seconds, and you got to speak loudly. I want to hear what kind of diagnostic process, troubleshooting might you use to see what, and it just gives you an opportunity to see. I love how some of you are interacting with each other in the chat. Um, the helper, absolutely agree with that. When you say to somebody, "Oh, I could do with you. In fact, you'd make an ideal candidate, or you'd be a great person for this." People love that, because what you're doing is you've identified some talent or strength that they have, and they almost always respond to it, apart from the one or two who just need it. Like, really? You think I could do that? Of course you could. I saw that thing you did the other day, and when that thing didn't work, you just came with an idea out of the box that nobody else had thought of. That was wonderful. So yeah, they absolutely love being in the role of it. And it may be that they decide, if you have a handful, say 6 or 7, that it might be that you assign certain roles, and it might be that one has a sort of management admin kind of role, or another one's great at sorting the problems out, but not so good at communicating what they are. Now, one of the other things, I'm reading Lauren's comment here about keeping up with current trends and that. So I sort of sneakily, I've used digital leaders sometimes to say, like, I'm thinking of buying this thing that it's a lot of money, not really sure, but you can almost ask them as like your review panel, like, do you want to have a look at this thing that I'm thinking of buying? Like, I'm thinking of buying loads of drones, but I bought one first of all, and I've got this one. And so you're allowing them to review equipment, and it's useful to hear their opinions. Of course, just that experience alone, they'll feel that as an intrinsic reward for the fact that they are doing all these extra chores that perhaps you or some overworked technician used to do. There's another thing as well, kind of development of the review panel. It may be that in the summer term, if you've got a school trip going somewhere, it might be that on the same day the school trip takes place, the digital leaders get to go on a special digital trip where it might just be that you can hire a minibus or a taxi or something, and they go off on something that's got more of a digital angle or emphasis. Especially if some of these, I mean, I had digital leaders who, for one reason or another, can't take part in physical activities because they might be on crutches for that period of time, or we've had children with long-term health issues, and if everybody else is going off to Camelot, Alton Towers, whatever, like a physical outward bound thing, to be able to take the digital leaders off to have something that's not so physical. Um, okay, so Sarah, that seems to work quite fine. um, and I've seen. This sounds like quite a logistical nightmare, but I'm often at the Bet Show in January down in London at the Excel conference exhibition space, and I have observed and I've said hello, and I've met groups of digital leaders accompanied with a teacher or a teaching assistant for the day, where um, they go around like almost like ants do, like exploring all the different things, and they've got their little notebooks and they're making their notes about what they think of the kind of things. So yeah, it's I think it's a great thing to do. Now I've probably so far spent a little bit more time than I'd envisaged or planned to spend on this, but I do want to mention to you a particular school that I think have done this like to really high level. So I live in a city called Preston in the north of England, and one of the suburbs or areas of Preston is called Penwortham, and there's a school there called St. Mary Magdalene, which everybody calls Mary Mags, and I've seen amazing stuff happen. Now, I hope she doesn't get to watch this because she'd be highly embarrassed, but Lara is a higher level teaching assistant there, so she does a lot of PPA cover and things like that. And when I meet Laura, sometimes she apologizes for not being a teacher, and I think she's fantastic. She's a great inspirational model for how she's supported digital leaders in the school. Now, Mary Mags, if I just click on here, you'll see that they have a blog. So I don't have to tell you too much. You could actually go and read the blog yourself later on. There's a link in that. It's just taking a few moments to load up. There, okay, Mary Mags Pie Club. Oh, look, and there are some of the Pie Club, and they're in Cambridge with Peter Lomas, and James Robinson, and Kerry Ann Philbin, who are all members of the Raspberry Pi Foundation. So I know that there was a trip where their digital leaders were able to travel down to Cambridge on the train. It was a real special reward. They got to meet Pete Lomas, who's the designer of the Raspberry Pi computer. But if you look through some of their blog posts, you'll read about some of the activities and things that they've planned. They have a Twitter page. So if I go back to my Twitter account, when I posted this in earlier, there'd been a tweet from them about half an hour just beforehand, so it's like an hour ago. So Mary Mag's Pie Club are tweeting and retweeting things, and there's a particular thing happening right now on the other side of the Atlantic that I'm going to mention. So one of the students now from Mary Mag's Pie Club, he's now 14, so it's a few years since he left Mary Mag's, and he's now over speaking at a conference, okay, maybe 2 hours ago, in somewhere in America, I've forgotten, Cleveland, Ohio. And he's been talking about a programming language that he's written. And all of this for him started right back at Mary Mag's Pie Club. They used to bring children along to an event I organized in Preston called Preston Raspberry Jam. And then there's another thing, if I go back there, I made a little video. Now, I'm not saying that we should all be doing this, but it's something that perhaps maybe even 5 or 10% of what they do, we could aspire to have in our schools. Now, I'm not going to play all of this video. I don't even know if the audio is going to play. But welcome to Makersphere UK. So I'm guessing you can't hear it, but I'm just going to turn the volume down or mute it. So you can see there's a strange guy there in a flowery shirt. You probably can't even watch the video. But what they did at Mary Magpie Club, they organised a huge big maker day that they called Makersphere, and there was so many different things going on that I thought I've got to make a video to capture this. So if you can see the picture that I can see on the screen right now, look, there I am again. But this was so it's a Saturday in July last year. And on this Saturday, about 24 teachers turned up, and they all had a CPD, activities and workshops, in one classroom. But in other classrooms around the school, there was about 500 or 600 people, all different things going on. There was an exhibition space where people brought along, okay, you could say it was, organized bedlam in a kind of way. There was so many different activities and workshops that people have brought along. People brought along robots that they built, and these are all people from the surrounding city and region. Let's see if I can go into. So I think this one. I don't know if you can see. Oh, maybe that's not as exciting. Two people talking in a room. Teacher here called Helen. Helen teaches in a school in Yorkshire, and she came down and she ran a workshop. So people came from all over, and it was family. It was just amazing. So don't need to tell you too much more about that. But if you can, watch that video later on, and it'll just give you like a flavor. You might even recognize some of the people in it. So what they've done on their blog, they've told a little bit of the story. You can always, if you use Twitter, you can always send them a tweet and just ask them some questions. Now, finally, a couple of links on the digital leader section, so I move into the other topics. Now, ChildNet have what they call the ChildNet Digital Leaders Program. As far as I can tell, that's free. I'm not saying that you have to follow it exactly to the letter, but they do have some useful documentation. They have some policies that you might decide to take and rebadge them, put the title of your school on them. Purple Mash. So you probably know that Purple Mash sells software to schools to help with literacy, numeracy, and computing as well. So Purple Mash also have some materials that you can download for free. There is an element where they sell badges and things like that. If you decide you want to have pin badges, they make those available. And then there's a document here that I found was quite a useful thing to get me focusing my head around it, where a head teacher's written an article about it. And some of these, what I did was I copied some of them. So I've acknowledged the source here. And I just reworded some of these and added things and took them out. So hints and tips like go on trips. Make sure that, the only thing, my impression reading this sounds to me like there's a lot put on the teacher. I'd say the best successful digital leader programs are heavily student led. The teacher takes on an executive role within it. But you could do with like a little small core group of 3 or 4 of them that you meet with them. You ask them what direction you think the group should be going in next. You put forward proposals, but you let them put them into place. I've seen children of all ages respond really well to those kind of planning challenges. Whereas when I read that post, I just felt it was a little bit too heavy on this. The teacher's going to do this, the teacher's going to do the other. And there's one other thing. Now, I don't know if this was meant to be shared to the public. It's possible that somebody should have got permission. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what they should have done, but there's a whole pack here with the brand I teach on it, and it's like a manual about how you might go about it. Somebody else has written it. I haven't written this. There's a URL that you can go and read there, but it's got things like policies and procedures and all sorts of different ideas. So I hope what I've done now is I've maybe in some way persuaded you that it's a really good venture to get into, but to try not to be completely involved, because I think the more heavily you get involved in the program, the more it's going to depend upon you. And we all know that at different times, certain times of the year where we can barely even think straight because there's so many different demands and things upon us. So, if I had another minute now, what I'd be saying is things like don't like by all means look at what Mary Mags were doing, but don't think you're going to be doing that within 6 months or so. That could be 3 or 4 years before you get to that point, but at least it's kind of aspirational level. What I would say is just start really small, and perhaps the summer term is a good time to do that, especially if people talk about trips and things like that. Now, talking of trips, just reminded me of something that I wasn't planning to talk about. Here it says other items you might be interested in. So this is just a little bit of a segue. Now I'm going to talk about something for about 2 or 3 minutes that's not on the agenda. If you're busting to take a trip to the toilet, or you need to get a drink, or you want to pause your YouTube video or whatever, now is a good time. You can skip ahead for the next minute or two. It was just about school trips. So I haven't got it with me today. No, but I have a copy of Hello World magazine. I take it with me pretty much everywhere I go. Are you a subscriber to Hello World magazine? I hope you're all going, yay, yay, we do. So Hello World is a completely free magazine to subscribe to. If you're a UK-based educator, teacher in a school, for example, you can sign up online and they will post you free. Issue 5 was released online on Tuesday this week, and I've not received my paper copy yet, so I'm hoping that today or the next week or so the paper copy lands. It's great to have it. Like, I have it on my iPad, and I have my iPad here on standby in case technology lets me down. And okay, let me mute the audio because I get lots of it. So there's an article in the Hello World magazine that I want to direct you to. Now, there's a link in the notes that you can go and you can try and do one thing at once. So I do have my iPad pretty much with me wherever I go. So there's the cover of the magazine. Try not to. Oh, okay. And what I want to show you was if you're planning a school computing trip for the summer term, look, there's a bluffer's guide to planning a computing school trip. And again, that's all free in that magazine. I think this is on page 88, oh, 78, 79, 80, 81. So there's loads of examples and suggested places. And if you want, if you can't get the magazine, I don't know why you can't. If you just want me to send you a free copy of that, like to the post and let me know, or electronically, then I will happily send that to you. In this section here that I'm looking at, so some people might have left the room just for a moment to go and have a little break. Let me just mention another thing. So one thing I'm really proud of, so I like to give lots of things away for free as much as possible. This thing I can't, unless you're absolutely so desperate you can't, then just have a quiet word with me, you know. But it's a conference that I organize in Bradford. This is the 3rd year we're doing it. It's called Exabytes. This is like the advert. Ba 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 ba. Exabytes 18. It's a teaching, technology, and education conference in Bradford, West Yorkshire, north of England. It says here it's £58.80. It's £49 plus VAT. But if your school is a customer of Exa, then it's only £10 to go. But if you'd like to come for free and you don't mind leading a workshop or talking to the teachers about something you do, then if you get in touch, then you can lead a workshop. I think it might say in here some things that people said last year, but teachers who came last year said it was the best conference they'd ever been to. They just liked it because it's teachers talking about the way they teach. Now, one of the problems when I was teaching was I felt like I was the only computing teacher in the village because there weren't many other computing teachers close by that I could talk to. Come to a conference like this, I don't know if you can see in the photographs, but they're all there's Matt Moore, there's Joe, there's Chris, computing teachers from all over the country, and we had even a couple from abroad. Where the lady came from Venezuela last year. So it's Friday the 29th of June. It's later on in the summer term. The idea is, imagine coming up to Bradford to the nice plush hotel, very nice food, and right, the advert has finished. So back onto the other section. So these were just a couple of things I think that you might be interested in. There's a link there to the magazine I was talking about. Now, if I go to my program, go to digital parents. So we're talking about digital leaders. So the segue into this section is all about digital parents. Now, so my experience has been in school that you can have umpteen policies about staff, student usage of of the internet, and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and good practice and this sort of thing. However, they're only in school at most for about 8 hours a day, like often less than that. So what about the other hours in the day? So some children, they go home and in their bedrooms they've got laptops with unfettered internet access. It's not filtered in any way. They've got iPads and Xboxes and all these devices. And some children were coming into school and they were talking to me about things that they'd seen online. I won't go into too much of the gory detail, but like particular characters from games that I knew were Peggy 15s and Peggy 18. I'd say like that game's, oh yeah, but my dad plays it all the time and he doesn't, I know I'm not supposed to play it really, but and or they have older siblings. And in a way, you kind of think, what's the point of having all these policies in school if they're being undermined when the children are at home? And surely the values that we're trying to uphold in school, like how we treat each other online, they should be extended the same at home. So the school I was at, I noticed there was this big, like a different digital divide. There was a divide between how we behaved when we were online in school. So even in school, one child was looking for an album, like a music collection of music, and they typed it as album, and the filter blocked it because they mentioned the word bum. Yes, at home you could use far scarier words than bottom or posterior, and you'll get very unpleasant things. So it was difficult for us to teach children in school how to be savvy and how to find the right things with all these strong safeguards and filters around when at home. Then, so I felt that what we needed a more kind of cohesive, integrated, and supportive relationship with parents. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how this story develops, but I need to make sure that people are still here. So I have a question that I'm going to post over here, paste, sorry, into the chat. And I'm going to ask you, tell me, now you don't have to go into too much detail. Like, obviously, I don't need to know individual cases, but just a couple of words or whatever about particular issues that are cropping up inside of your school. And we'll probably find that they're the same issues that happen in many other schools. And I'm going to be a bit quieter. Um, so, yeah, so apps where children can say whatever they want to whoever they want about whoever they want. Um, we don't allow that in school. We don't allow those behaviors in school. But yet, if the child's coming in and that's all they've been seeing in the evening before they've gone to bed, and they wake up and that's the first thing they see, it's very hard for us to try and teach in a supportive, welcoming, warm environment when this child's got all this. You're fat, you're ugly, you're bald. I'm not really bald. Look, do you have some hair here? But when they're failing to subject to all of that peer pressure, and we can, case by case, like WhatsApp one, we could try and have a chat with Mr. and Miss Jones and see if did they know that their child is using. But it's just sometimes you're opening a can of worms because it turns out that the parents often don't really know how to use. They don't even know what are good and safe behaviors, and um, yeah, there's a common theme that's coming up here. So one of them is inappropriate content. Now, I am working on some projects that I hope will solve these, and that might come in the next webinar or the one after. But I want to tell you about something I think is a really practical solution that I think may help make a difference. Now, I'm going to talk about one specific school, but I'm actually talking about a lot of schools together. So if I said, oh, and then a parent said this and a parent said that, I'm talking about generally there have been cases where parents have said that. So if I show you some photographs, I'm not saying that this person in that, yeah. So I'm using one specific example, but I'm talking generically about a few different ones. So this story is, imagine there's a school where there's a very cross section of sort of ethnic, social, um, background. And some of the children have got lots of digital devices at home, but they don't spend a lot of time with their parents. And sometimes some of the sort of parental care is done by nannies who think it's great for children to be able to go on these, go on their iPads and watch all of these things, and it keeps them busy. And then you've got maybe other parents who really haven't, didn't have so many positive experiences of their own education and time at school. So the children are coming into this school and they're reporting and talking about things that are going on outside of school. And the teachers feel a bit uneasy about this. And I think, well, what we should really do is we should organise an event after school, like an information briefing where we invite the teachers, parents to come along, and we can not exactly tell them how to parent their own children, but we can mention things like Roblox and Fortnite and WhatsApp and just see if they know. Now, there's loads, you probably know already, there's loads of different sites and resources where you can go. So you decide you're going to, advertise this particular evening, and you probably find that the uptake of parents isn't as strong as you'd like, and maybe six parents sign up to come along, and then on the night there's two, and one of them is a parent governor, and the other is another parent who you didn't really feel needed to come along, and you kind of think, well, what was that all about? And unfortunately, it feels a little bit like parents' evenings, that the very parents that you need to speak to are not the parents who turn up at these events. So um, I did something. I don't think I was being naughty. I think I was just being a little bit more Machiavellian in the way that it is. So we planned to hold an event after school, but it was badged as a family event. And the family event was come along, we'll have a bit of fun, we're going to make some computer games, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more of the story. Now, there's some photographs that might help me tell this story and expand on it. So what I'm doing is I'm describing one particular example, but it's a more of a generic thing. So I've done this with other schools, and I'm not trying to, what's the word? I'm not trying to tout my service to say, invite me into your school and I'll do this, because you don't need me. You could do this yourself. So so this event, we call it a family hack jam. Can you see the photos at the moment? Just checking. You should be able to see. Just somebody just say yes. I can see the photo. You should be able to see a photo. Me pointing to something. Okay. So this school that I was invited into to run this event, we called it a family hack jam, and I think it was something like 4 till 7 o'clock or 4 till 6:30. It was about 2.5 hours or so. And we spent about a month advertising. It was come along, bring your devices with you, laptops, iPads, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to build some games. It's a family evening. Now, ideally, if you can do this on a Friday, sometimes you might decide you'll have pizzas or something else instead. But let me just carry on anyway. So, now, what we were very surprised about was we planned to run it in a classroom, but then so many parents and families subscribed to this that we had to move into the assembly hall and decide to use a few classrooms. So we actually had 80 people altogether, parents and children, registered to come to this event. So what happened was we're all sat down, good evening, and the person leading the event, which was me in this case, says, right, we're going to build a story tonight. We're all going to build a story together in our teams. And what I want you to do, and I gave them, it's a bit like whose line is that anyway? I gave them a couple of visual prompts, things to think about, but they had to write a response on a bit of paper, fold a piece of paper, pass it on to somebody else, get another piece of paper, write something else. And the way I said it was, oh, the internet is a great place to go. You can find bargains, you can do this. And what I like to do is I like to think of the best thing you can think of on the internet or something wonderful about the internet and write it down. Fold it on a piece of paper, pass it on. So they did that. And then the next question. Now, sometimes when you're on the internet, things happen that you don't expect to happen. It might be something that's unpleasant. It could be something that's like gives you a shock. And I like to write an example, but please don't go into too much detail. It's like if it's something that you wouldn't like to look at, don't start writing. Just say something like, and I was given suggestions. So like a rude picture or something that wasn't very child friendly or so they had to write something down that could be unpleasant. Or it could be that they had their money stolen or their house burgled or something like that. And then there was some other um, like some random element that they had to include. So these are all passed around, and eventually every individual person in the room has one piece of paper. So when they open it, it's got three different prompts. So it could say like, you've won a holiday to Disneyland on the internet. Second thing is you have all your money stolen, and then there could be whatever. So they've got three things, and then what they had to do is in their family teams, they had to decide which of these was the great ingredient or potential for a story to build. So the way that they did this was um, they just basically have to pitch their idea to everybody else in the team, and some of these were really, really funny, and they were laughing. And I can remember overhearing this boy here to say like, "Well, the way it works is because the random element for him was a purple unicorn. Well, the purple unicorn is surfing on the internet, and while he's surfing on the internet, this big thing comes up, and the dad was like." Does it have to be a purple unicorn? Like, could it be another, So it's really nice, interactions going on. And then some families had brought iPads, some had brought laptops. The families with lots of expendable income, they like to bring the biggest, poshest Apple new MacBooks. And some couldn't bring any equipment along, but I knew because when you registered for the event, we find out. So we booked a computer room and we brought some extra equipment. So there's a tool that I use sometimes called Twine. I think there might be a link to that in the document in the notes. But it allows you to build interactive stories. And the only thing you have to do is use the letters on the keyboard and the square bracket symbol. And what you do is you write something like, you're walking down, okay, in this example, right, you're on the internet, something pops up to say you've won a family holiday to Disneyland. Do you, and then square bracket, do you click on the link? Do you close the link? Or do you, and you can give another option. And then basically what happens, when you put those square brackets on there, that creates that option. And then they have to write the consequences. So each family team are building a story which has choices and consequences. And I went around and I would speak to the groups going along. And I was like, now, you can have silly things, you can have entertaining things, but one of the things you've got to do is there's got to be some real hard choices in there. Well, do I choose the blue pill or the red pill? Do I go through this? Do I not click on this? It sounds really good. In fact, it sounds too good to be true. Oh, hang on. So the idea was they were building a learning tool. Now there was a point as the evening went on where the children became heavily, okay, and some of the parents as well, heavily involved in developing it. And at this point, some of the parents were like wandering over and saying, so like, is there a tool I can buy or download that like, makes sure that my children don't go on the things that they're supposed to do? And I jokingly replied, said, yeah. It's called a parent. And some of them were like, what, a parent? I parent? Like, no. It's just like good parenting. If you cannot trust your child to go on things without going on the wrong thing, then really you're not ready at a point where they can do that. So I'm not saying yes, you're right. Now so somebody said it takes a bit of courage to say that. That happened in one school. In other schools, some of the parents were saying, gosh, actually, this has really got me thinking. And so in some schools, what's actually happened is we've then ended up with a core of parents who have then helped support the school in terms of lots of different outcomes. So I need to wrap this up. I'm going to move on to the other section. Like an hour is really not long enough, or it's too long. So in one school, the way this worked was we then ended up with a whole school online safety policy. So we thought, like, well, hang on, if this thing is good enough to have in school, why shouldn't we have the same thing at home as well? And it meant you then had this more coherence, this integration between, and so these kind of things. We also we then found later on when we started doing things that were more we need parents, we could actually ask some of the parents to come along and talk about candidly some of the examples of things that happened and when with their own children. But it's an idea of many. And if I refer back, okay, just to finish up, there was a bit later on, excuse me, where the teams got to show each other their stories, and we talked about the stories, we shared the stories. But right, back to the document. So just to help you, just in terms of that particular model, there's some links to resources that you can click on. You don't have to pay for these. They're all freely available. You can download and have a look. In the blog post, some other teachers have taken this idea and they've run with it, a similar thing in their school. So having a digital parents group, maybe start with one or two parents, a conversation with them. Don't expect the very first time you're going to have 80 turning up. So it's about, and if you want to, I think I've put my contact details if I go to the very top of the document. If you've got particular problems or ideas or things you want to scope out, then you can just click there. And if you go into that document, my email address appears. I've got an easy way that you can see my email address. It's just alan@exa.foundation. That normally highlights when I do that. Or there's a longer one because people are confused by that email address. There's a longer one there if you prefer the longer one. Now, I haven't really allowed enough time for our final segment, so we might run over a little bit to 5 past 5 or 10 past, just to allow 15 minutes or so. And it was really, if I go to that link, what apps are out there for computing? So I'm asking you, what are you using? And when I say apps, I don't just mean mobile apps like for iPad or Android, but is there particular software that you would highly recommend to others that you think like, wow, if that software now didn't exist, um, I'd find it really difficult to do what I'm doing. I know that, again, there's no recommendations or endorsements for products from me. I try to encourage people to use free software where possible. I cannot help but notice lots of teachers going like, "Oh, we just got Purple Mash, or we've got Purple Mash," and I'm not really going to say what my opinions are about that because I'm being honest, I haven't actually used it myself, so I can't say it's not. But it does seem to be very popular. Um, I wonder whether some people are seeing like, "Oh, we've got Purple Mash, so therefore it doesn't really matter who's teaching computing. We just put the children in front of the software." I'm not saying that happens. I just wonder, is there sometimes that sort of temptation? Book creator on Chromebooks. Okay, not one that I'm aware of, but we've got a recommendation there from Sarah. G Suite. Okay, so you probably know already. There's a few different free software suites, and G Suite's becoming more and more popular for like not just for the teachers, but students sharing work. Seesaw. And I suppose maybe what I was thinking of when I said computing, I'm actually thinking like algorithms and programming, but I didn't say that because, of course, computing embraces all of those sorts of things as well. Um, Scratch is the bee's knees, right? Sam, fully agree with you there. I absolutely love Scratch. It wasn't an easy journey for me at first. I think I first saw it about 2010, 2011 when I first saw it, and I really didn't get it. I didn't understand it at first. And then when I first started using Scratch, I think I fell into the trap of teaching children how to build specific things in Scratch without actually teaching them more kind of sustainable things like um, using values and objects and flow control and things like that, and actually designing things, which that came later on. So I think in a later webinar, I will mention a little bit about that. Now, I spent nearly an hour just getting this document ready today, but if I'd had a bit more time, what I would have done is I would have shown you. I've got a list of what I hear are the most highly used and recommended. If you've got one of these devices or a few of them, and if I bring that closer to camera, I should have done a screenshot really. Oh, so you might have seen some icons on there. So I'm going to read them out in case that's not obvious what they are. You might recognize some of the symbols. So Scratch Junior, that's the younger cousin of Scratch or the younger sibling. Fantastic. Like I've used this with older children as well. There's no secrets. It's fantastic. Lightbot, another fantastic one. Getting children to think, problem solving. How are you going to solve all these? Um, it Scratch Junior, fantastic for Key Stage 1. Year 4, I can't see you having problems using it with Year 5. But if you've only got iPads, then if you wait to August, the new version of Scratch, Scratch 3, currently will work on iPads, will work on everything. So I'm a big fan of Scratch. What else have we got? Swift Playgrounds. Now, again, you probably noticed there's a bit of a bias in me towards paying lots of money for things. I myself, this is my iPad. Okay. Um, I was lucky in that I taught in a computing suite, so we didn't have to use iPads. I have tried and played with Swift Playgrounds recently, and I just could not believe how slow it was. Like, so you build the algorithm, you do the thing, and it just seems to take so long for the animations to load. I mean, if you're using it, you could tell me, no, actually, in your school it works fine. It's really, really fast. Um, and the thing is, I didn't feel that Swift Playgrounds offered a lot. In fact, anything that Scratch didn't already have. And one of the things I love about Scratch is it's got this huge online community. And if you've got children who can't afford to have iPads at home, but you're teaching them Swift Playgrounds in school, well, that might be okay. But if you want the children, to be inspired and engaged and want to go on and do that at home, and they haven't got iPads, I don't know. I just feel it's a little bit closed. Whereas things that I mentioned here, Lightbot, um, loads and loads of different free versions of Lightbot that I've seen. Highly recommend that one there. Here's another one I'm going to suggest. Again, this one, every time I use it, it doesn't cost any money, and I have to try and remember it. It's Code for Life. Oh, didn't put this in the document. Okay, it looks a bit different since I last visited, but Code for Life. I will put a link to that in the doc. Let me just do that for a moment. So my understanding is there's a code of developers who work for Ocado. They do the delivery for Waitrose, and that's Code for Life. And when I've used it myself, what I've managed to do, and I've found they like you to register as a teacher to go in, but there's a tool called Rapid Router. And similar to Lightbot and some of the other Lightbot-like activities, there's little exercise and activities. We have to plan how to get a delivery van from one place to another. So I know that sometimes when I'm doing the webinars, the video can be a bit slow to load up, so you might not get the full experience. And there's about 5 minutes left of the webinar. So here is a little van, and here's the target area, and you might recognize that as the Ocado symbol. And what I have to do, let me resize my window so you can see everything I can see. So there's a programming language called Google Blockly. And what I need to do is I need to take the blocks that I want to use and dock them into the correct place. So let me see, we'll move forwards be enough. So click play, sound effects, yay! I'll be honest, I've done this a couple of times before, so it's not too challenging, but you go through the levels. Now, I'm going to come up with what I think is a demon. Now, I don't know if they intended for people to do this. I'm really struggling. I have to make my window really small to make it fit in here. Just scroll down. Resize. Now, you probably can't read this because this is too small now. But it says I'm now on level 2. I wonder what would happen if I put a number 1 in there. I know, because I've done this before. Now, I wouldn't tell students I was doing this exactly. Oh gosh, so now I'm on level 21, and okay, so I have to go try level 21 and see how I get on. So you're not going to be able to see all of this, are you? Because it doesn't all fit on the screen. But it's basically a windy track, and you have to figure out and how many times I have to do that. Now, earlier we were talking about digital leaders. What about if you were looking for some kind of a recruitment test or something for your digital leaders, and you could say, right, and you could have, so click on this link for exercise 1, click on like 21, 35, and you could maybe time them and see, I don't know, it's just an idea. What you can do is if you go through it the proper way, not the way that Alan's been showing you, the naughty way, you can create accounts for your students so they can log in, and you could say to them something like, well, we could have a digital leader gold, digital leader silver, digital leader bronze. And we think some of your bronze levels should be able to complete exercises 1 to 18. But if you try 19, 20, and 21, you find them really difficult, then you're probably not quite ready for the silver level. Of course, you could actually, in a way, use it as an assessment to shortlist your digital leaders. Now, I'm probably going to wrap this up in the next minute or two. What I'd like to do is I'd just like to go back and remind you a couple of things. And if you've got any questions now that you want to type into the chat, now is a really good time to do so. So if I go back to the very top of the document, I can make it larger this time. What I said at the very beginning was the room, the notes document. You'll always be able to access these notes from that link there. You just click on there, wait for a moment. Now today, if I looked at my watch, it says it's the 10th of May. So I go down to the 10th of May, and there's the details. That's how you sign up, and there's where you click on the notes. So clicking on notes brings you back to this document. That's to save you later on. Like, oh, Alan, where's the document? I can't find it. As long as you go to exa.foundation events, you might also notice while you're there, you might go, oh, he's doing a oh, that's the webinar. Oh, he was at a primary. Actually, I don't have that many primary things coming up in June, but schools often invite me in to do free after school events. I do twilights, I do networks, and I almost never charge to do those. You might want to register for the next webinar. In a few minutes, when I press the stop button, I'll have a recording on YouTube. The link will appear there, so you can go back and you can review and remind yourself about certain things. But please now, before you disappear, while it's still fresh in your mind, will you go and fill in the feedback form? I don't really think tonight was as good as it could have been, but I'd like you to help me by typing your name. Be honest if you want, or put in Mickey Mouse, but it'd be better if you be honest. I'm just going to say today you took part in the 10th of May primary one. How did you watch it? You took part in the live thing, or you watched the video. How useful? Some people say, oh, Alan, it was brilliant. I gave you a 5. Okay, read the instructions. 5, you're actually saying it was complete waste of your time. 1 is you found it really effective, really, really useful. And things for the future, like maybe you could add in something there about the pace, too fast, too slow, just right, practical ideas. Would you recommend it to others? These are just basically to help me realize whether I've done a good job. But at the end, if you feel up to it, you could actually write in some more comments here, like, oh, I think at the beginning you did a bit of this, there should have been that, maybe if you'd done more of this, and or topics for the future. But you can pretty much put anything you want in that box. And if you want me to get in touch with you about coming into your school and doing a free event, or point you to some resources, what I will do every few days, I will come back and I will read these, or a colleague of mine will, and then they'll suggest them to me, and then you click submit. So please, 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 before you disappear, give me some feedback on that, and I'll say, well, thank you. I think that's a wrap. So I'm going to go over now and press the stop button, and I will hang around for a couple of minutes in case anybody wants to ask a question while they've caught me and it's not being recorded. So if you've got a question like that, but you don't want to go in the recording, think of the question now. You might be just listening to my voice go on and on and on while you fill in the feedback form. So I'm now going to go and press the button that stops the recording.